Stay tuned. Ahead, I'll talk with David Baldacci about To Die For. It's the third novel featuring Travis Devine, the 620 Man. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. David Baldacci is a global #1 best-selling author with 150 million copies sold worldwide. His works have been adapted for both feature film and television. Baldacci is also the co-founder, along with his wife, of the Wish You Well Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting literacy efforts across America. And we'll learn more about that later, but first, we'll talk about his latest novel, To Die For. David, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Well, the 620 Man is back again in this novel, so where are you taking readers this time?
So Travis Devine still has the girl on the train after him from the book The Edge, and he's sent to the Pacific Northwest to Seattle. He's there to guard a girl, 12-year-old girl named Betsy Odom, who just lost her parents mysteriously, and her uncle is a criminal, and he wants to adopt her. He's being prosecuted by the federal government. They don't want her anywhere near the guy, so they bring in Travis Devine to protect Betsy Odom. And he has to deal with a bunch of federal agencies there too, and he doesn't know who to trust. It seems like his enemy is his ally, and his ally is his enemy. So it's a confounding moment for him too. But the most perplexing challenge for him in this book is getting to know Betsy Odom and having her come to trust him. He has no clue what to do with a 12-year-old girl. That is not in his skill set. So that is his kryptonite so far in this novel.
And she is a very interesting character. I mean, she's been through a lot, so that's shaped her character. And at one point in the book, she talks about being much older in sort of emotional years than her 12 years old chronological years would indicate.
Yeah, she really has been through a lot. Her parents really never got their act together. She was homeless for a lot. She was hungry for a lot. She didn't live in really good economic conditions. And she's street smart because of that. She's had to learn, how to take care of herself in many respects. Gives her a hardened edge. So I had to bring that out to make it authentic in the novel. But I also had to keep in mind she was still a 12-year-old girl who just lost her parents. So incredibly traumatic. And her bluster, her hard edge was oftentimes to cover up the feelings of vulnerability and fragility and just being scared. And Devine has to sort of figure that out and come to have a relationship with her where she comes to trust him and vice versa. Otherwise, he's never going to get through to her, which he needs to as well. So that was the most touching relationship in the novel between those two, and a really critical point of what I was trying to accomplish in the story.
And she pointed out it's not in his skill set to deal with a 12-year-old. So there are times when he feels like she had, the advantage, and she was being the one who was in control of the conversation instead of him. So that is a challenge. The other challenge he faces, and you open the book with it, is that girl on the train. And he finds this note, which is really interesting because obviously she wants to kill him, but she's had opportunities to do it, and she didn't.
Right.
So you wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, there were a couple of ways I could have handled the girl on the train. And I could have made her what she looks like. This antagonist is going to do her best to kill him. Or I could do a more nuanced, complicated route, which is what I chose to do in the novel. And that's one of those ones where your ally is your enemy, is your ally is your enemy sort of thing. And sometimes you find a friend in the least likely places. And that was the case with her. I wanted to make her more complex than what she started out to be. And I think that's always interesting when you have a reader who thinks you're going to go down a certain pathway and they feel comfortable and they got that little box checked and they know what's going to happen. And then you throw them a curveball and all of a sudden they have to sit up a little straighter and pay more attention to the story because it's not going how they thought it was going to be going.
So for him, he's dealing with several things at the same time. Not only is he helping out this 12-year-old girl and trying to gain her confidence, at the same time he has this threat from the girl on the train. So he's constantly on the lookout for threats that might not only hurt him, but may actually hurt her, because I don't want to get too much into the spoilers, but people have a bad habit of dying in this book.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who die in this novel for sure. And using a military term, Devine has it coming from all flanks, front, back, and both wings. And he has to really look out everywhere because he's not really sure to trust at this point either. And people have been unreliable narrators to him. They've told him things that turned out not to be true. Even people he's supposed to be working with, which obviously is going to be something that he's going to have to deal with and to take into account. And at the end of the day, he just has to, one, survive and make sure that Betsy Odom survives as well. And the cool thing about Betsy, I do charity auction winners in my books a lot. There are 4 in this novel where people have donated to charities. And so I write about them using their character name in a novel. And Betsy Odom is actually a woman in her late 60s or early 70s, living in Florida. So she's gotten a huge kick out of, being a 12-year-old girl in this novel. But it's one of the reasons to bring her to bear in this story is that it allows me to deepen and broaden Devine's character. Again, he's never had to deal with someone like her. And in order to do that, he's got to look inside himself and find something deeper than what readers have seen in the first 2 novels that he's been in. So that allows his character arc to continue to evolve and grow.
So is that part of what keeps your interest in him, that you're able to continue to develop that character?
Very much so. I mean, it's not just about, I could think of a million plots to put him in, and his character would never change, and he just does his marching orders and figures stuff out, and at the end of the day saves the day, and then he goes on to the next novel. But that's not enough for me. I want to actually get to know him better in every novel, get to know what makes him tick, new things about him, fresh facts and details, things he may not even know about himself now, but he realizes because we all go through life and we meet challenges and we learn things about ourselves, how we respond to those challenges. I didn't know I was capable of that. That's interesting. So that's what I try to do with my characters in the stories.
I'm talking with David Baldacci about To Die For, and our conversation continues in a moment. If you're enjoying this discussion, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. And thank you. And this book goes to several different locations, and for people who are familiar with those locations, it'll ring true. I've seen the gum wall in Seattle. It's something, if you've seen, you don't forget. Right. So that was very evocative to imagine what was happening in that area. But a lot of it's also set in Virginia, which obviously you're very familiar with. So I was curious about, given that familiarity, still what kind of research challenges this book may have posed for you.
Yeah, so I traveled to the Pacific Northwest about a year and a half ago, and that actually inspired me to set part of the novel there, most of the novel there. I needed an urban area like Seattle, and I needed a rural, isolated area like Ricketts, Washington, which is the southeastern part. It's a fictional town, but it's in the southeastern part of Washington State for a variety of reasons you'll learn about when you read the novel. But there is research to be done in all aspects of that, even the stuff that takes place in Virginia. But then my job is to leave most of the research out. I'm not writing a textbook. I'm writing a thrilling, narrative tale. So I need to integrate that research very carefully. A bit of dialogue here, a little bit of a paragraph here, a little bit of a narrative seam there. Otherwise, you run into flip books where you have sort of stuffed the research in and you just got to flip past it and you get back to the story. I don't want to write flip books. So the rule for me is all the research that I do, I leave almost all of it out.
Mm-hmm. That's got to be the challenge. You've got so much information. You maybe think, well, this would be fascinating if I shared that, but it's going to drag down the plot, so I really can't do that.
That's a question I'm confronted with all the time. Absolutely.
Now, refresh my memory. Maybe I do at some point when I read the other books, but why is he called the 620 Man?
So in the very first novel, he worked on Wall Street. He lived in Westchester. So he would take the 620 train in every morning to Manhattan, then transfer at Grand Central and go downtown to Wall Street. And the train actually played a big role in that novel. He saw some things from the train as he was going into the city that played critical roles in the novel later on, in the story later on. So that moniker, the 620 Man, is kind of stuck with him because that's where people first met Travis Devine.
And of course, we've got the girl on the train too, so trains continue to factor in to his life.
They absolutely do. And, she tried to kill him in Europe when he was taking a high-speed rail between France and Italy. She missed him there, mostly due to him. And she tried to kill him a couple more times during the course of the novel The Edge, which was the novel just preceding To Die For. And then at the end of The Edge, he gets back home after completing his mission, finds a note in his pocket. It's her again. She's coming after him. She obviously was right there at the airport. And instead of killing him, she put the note in his pocket as sort of an honorable, raising an honorable challenge that I will kill you, but I will not do it the cheap way. And I will see you soon. And so she lays down the gauntlet, and that story is played out in To Die For.
I'm curious. I mean, obviously, you're very busy writing your novels, but when you're not writing, what do you like to read?
I read everything from nonfiction, biographies, fiction, commercial fiction, literary fiction, mysteries, thrillers. I like to read. I like to think that, reading is like weightlifting for your brain. It makes your brain stronger and bigger and better and more well developed. So books have always been a huge part of my life. When I was a kid, I grew up in Richmond in the 60s and 70s, in the middle of Jim Crow, in the middle of a very racist life. And I never got to travel for real, but I traveled the world through books, and it made me a better person. It allowed me to escape from the perspectives that I grew up with. And I got to meet lots of people around the world that I never got to meet for real, but I got to meet them on the pages, and I got to know them, walk around in their skin. And so my ignorance and my intolerance were just ripped right out of me. And that's what books do for you. Not only do they do that, but they teach you empathy, which is probably the greatest human attribute. And so people who don't read, they don't have the benefit of that. So the world is a better place when more people read.
Well, kids today, it's a totally different world than when you grew up or I grew up. And there's a lot of time they spend on social media, where often it's an echo chamber. So they're not getting exposed to a lot of the ideas that you just talked about. So is that a concern for you?
Big concern. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, I would get rid of social media across the board and would just disappear. Kids are now, they're doom scrolling and they're addicted to this, and they don't really learn anything new they didn't know. And their brains are becoming incapable of reading long form narratives, where they can't make it through 100 pages or 200 pages or God forbid 400 pages. They can barely make it through 100 characters on a tweet. So it's doing a disservice to our minds. It's doing a disservice to our humanity. Really, books are the way that I saw the world. And for people who can't travel anywhere, if they're not going to read a book, where are they going to learn from? From the echo chamber, which is only going to reinforce what I see as sort of dark things. I've been on these social media platforms, and my God, you can go down the rabbit holes of all rabbit holes. And a lot of people never come back out of those things. So what's the point? How does that make you a better human being? I know that books made me a better human being, and that's why I preach it and yell it from the rooftops that this is the way to go. Your life is not going to improve by being on this thing 14 hours a day, going through page after page after page of who knows what. Pick up a book. You'll be much better for it.
One of the ways you're trying to promote that is the Wish You Well Foundation. And you also have a foundation also is for Body and Mind. Tell us about those two initiatives.
So Wish You Well Foundation, we formed it about 25 years ago. We've funded programs to support literacy across the country, and we'll continue to do so. Our mission statement is simple: eradication of illiteracy in the U.S. Illiteracy is home to most of our social ills: poverty, crime, homelessness, and ignorance. So if you get rid of that, a lot of our social ills falls away. You'll be able to reach your economic potential, because you need strong reading and cognitive skills to succeed in society today. If you don't have that, then you're never going to reach your economic potential. You're never going to reach your moral potential either if you don't read a diverse body of work where you can explore the world and the people that inhabit it. And the Feeding Body and Mind came about because we realized the hunger and poverty and illiteracy are all tied together. If you're illiterate, chances are very high you're impoverished. And if you're impoverished, chances are very high that you're food challenged. So we partner with Feeding America, which runs the nation's food banks. And so when I go on tour, I send boxes ahead. My fans can donate books. Books are donated to the food banks, and people going in seeking food can take books home with them, which can nourish their spirit and their soul and their mind, while the food nourishes their belly. So that's where that concept came in, because all of those social ills are tied together.
Well, we've been talking about To Die For, which is the third book to feature this 620 man. Will we see more adventures with the 620 man in the future?
Absolutely. There's a lot more for Travis Devine to be involved in. I'm just getting to know his character now. I sold the rights to the 620 man to Netflix. They're making a series of movies based on the books. I read the script of the first one, and I'm excited about that coming into silver screen. I've got 2 other series at Amazon. I have another series at NBC Universal. So a lot of content I've sold in the last 18 months. And So I think you see a bunch of that stuff coming to the screen next year. But Travis Devine definitely will be back.
The book is To Die For by David Baldacci. It's the third book to feature Travis Devine, the 620 man. David, thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
If you would like to purchase To Die For, I've placed a link for you in the description below. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more interviews you might find interesting. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.